Hi everyone, welcome to my presentation on the case study for TrendPie. So first, we'll look at a brief history of TrendPie. What is TrendPie and what does it do? Secondly, we'll look at the case study discussion questions and then conclude. So TrendPie, what is TrendPie? TrendPie is a digital influencer marketing company that started in 2015 and was started by Victor Richey as he was studying his studies at university in the United States. He was able to achieve a revenue of $1 million US by 2018. That's roughly 3 years from when he started the business. To understand how Richey got here, we need to backtrack to 2013, when Victor was a senior in high school. So at the time, like a normal, typical teenager, he had several social media accounts, and particularly on YouTube, he posted a life hack video where he showed how to separate egg yolks and egg whites using a water bottle. I've searched, I haven't been able to find the video, but it went viral, and because of that and a few other videos that also went viral, he garnered 1.4 million followers. He soon became an influencer. So an influencer is someone who is able to influence the behavior of one's social media followers. So they can influence what their followers tweet about on Twitter, what videos they watch on YouTube. So an influencer is somebody who sort of can have that sort of effect on their followers, and as a result is often approached by different companies who want to reach their followers because their followers are in their target market. So Victor saw the opportunity to use his social media status and connections to provide a low-cost influencer marketing option for small companies. At the time, the digital sort of ad spending market was projected to grow to about $100 billion US by 2020, and much of this growth was coming from social media, especially from Twitter, which is very much used in the US / Northern Hemisphere countries more so. So these studies showed that 49% of Twitter users followed brands and companies compared to about 16% of social network users overall. And so Twitter sort of became a major target for companies wanting to sort of get their brand and product awareness out there. Finally, advertising experts also reported that budgets for influencer marketing were expected to double over the following 2 years from 2015. So it was kind of the perfect environment for Victor to enter the market, and he didn't want to miss out on the opportunity. And so he was able to turn his social media network into a business, essentially. So next we're going to look at the case study questions. There were 4 questions. The first one was, in what ways does TrendPie represent a typical entrepreneurial venture? The second question was, what do you think about the actions Victor has taken to protect his business ideas and to ensure the continued growth of his business? The third question, what lessons can be learned from the case about starting an internet company? And lastly, what should Victor do with the business after graduation? Which is a very, very interesting question. So first, in what ways does TrendPie represent a typical entrepreneurial venture? So first, an entrepreneur is someone who starts their own for-profit business. Victor, inspired by his enormous base of social media followers, saw an opportunity to leverage this in order to start his own business. So, that's in essence, that's sort of being an entrepreneur, sort of seeing that opportunity and then sort of going ahead with the idea and starting it. And this is reminiscent of companies such as Facebook or Google that began with their founders seeing and seizing a business opportunity. Another aspect of a typical entrepreneurial venture is its humble beginnings. So just like the founders of Facebook, Google, or even Cookie Time, a New Zealand company well known for its delicious homemade cookies, Victor developed his influencer marketing idea from his dorm room, which is very typical. Another aspect is the ability to see a gap in the market. Victor looked at the competition and the potential gaps in the influencer market. He found that companies like Twitter, as mentioned before, were already offering sponsored tweets to help companies reach their target market. But this type of a business model meant that companies needed to have highly trained marketing and communications professionals, which was quite expensive for smaller firms. In addition, there were influencer marketing companies and also other marketing companies such as Social Chain or Tapjoy that specialized in using celebrities or social media personalities to target audiences. This also required companies to have a substantial budget or funding to be able to have this way of reaching their target customers. So here Victor saw an opportunity to use his social media status and connections to provide a low-cost influencer marketing options for these small companies. Another symbol of this entrepreneurial venture was Victor's innovation. Innovation is really key. He decided to run campaigns daily instead of weekly or monthly. This way, he could work more proactively with his clients on changing the message or doing away with it all if it wasn't having desired results. By 2017, he was running about 35 to 40 campaigns per month. Personally, I work in a marketing environment where we're often running monthly or bi-monthly campaigns, or sometimes campaigns that run the span of a few months, they say 2 to 3 months. And the amount of time it takes to develop the content for these campaigns is quite a lot, usually a couple of weeks, depending on how long the campaign is. So for Victor to be able to run daily campaigns, in my view, is phenomenal. And then lastly, Victor also had to spend some of his money, which is sort of typical of an entrepreneurial business where you have to sort of dig into your own pockets and sort of fork out a little bit more than you're initially intending to. His first client, Josh, had an app called Drunk Mode that he needed it to get trending on Twitter. So although Victor was paid $2,000 to run the campaign, he soon realized that he needed to put a lot more effort, that means his own time, and money into the task. At the time, he was a university student, he had classes to go to, he was also a track runner, so he had all these things to do, but he needed to sort of put time aside for this. So he put a lot more effort and money into the task, and this is very typical of an entrepreneurial venture where a person has to dig into their own savings to give the business that initial boost. The second question is, what do you think about about the actions Victor has taken to protect his business ideas and to ensure the continued growth of his business? So, firstly, Victor made sure he had the right background by signing up for a marketing and entrepreneurship course while at university, which is a really good first step because these programs would give him the tools that he needed to establish his startup business, sort of coming from no background whatsoever, no idea about creating a business model, about strategy, about market research. Enrolling in these programs sort of gave him that extra step in the process. Also, Victor established a limited liability company as opposed to a sole proprietorship. This was a good move to ensure future growth for his business by making room for future investors, and this ended up paying out for him because at a later stage when he needed to expand his business, he offered his first client, Josh, the one who had the app we just spoke about, he offered him equity in TrendPie, and Josh in turn helped Victor to get more clients and even media coverage in media outlets such as the Huffington Post, which helped Victor a lot in terms of upscaling the business and growing bigger when he was ready to. Another aspect of Victor working to both protect his business also ensure continued growth is communication. Communication is key. Victor's business model that involved liaising with customers on a daily basis addressed various issues he saw the competitors were having. So the competitors had trouble clarifying how to charge for their services, as it was unclear how the results would be measured. And then on the other hand, influencers often felt that they were not being paid fairly. With Victor's new business model, the daily communication made sure that clients could better clarify their expectations to influencers and also change their message where needed. Victor also established a daily flat fee for both clients and influencers. This created security for influencers, but also meant that clients didn't have to pay more if they didn't want to continue running the campaign. So they had that flexibility where they're, following up the campaigns on a daily basis, and so they can decide, oh, actually, hey, change the message this way so that we can kind of, get more people tweeting about it or following this, or actually, this whole thing is not working, so let's just kind of can it or stop it and try another idea next time. And so companies were always sort of getting their money's worth. Each party was getting their money's worth, in a sense. Another good decision was establishing formal contracts with his clients and influencers. So this helped ensure that his business would be formally recognized. For example, Victor had a situation where PayPal had frozen his account due to large transactions being made without any invoices or receipts being submitted, and so they froze his account as a result, because it wasn't like a legal entity, or it wasn't transacting as it should if it was a legal entity. So this also made it clear to both clients and influencers what the expectation was for the business relationship. There have been countless cases of employers abusing their powers and expecting employees to do more than what is expected of them, and then vice versa as well, where an employee does very little and expects to be paid in full. I'm sure many of us would have witnessed, similar scenarios over time and over our working careers. So with a formal contract, each party can live up to certain expectations, and they can also be held liable should either party break the terms of the contract. In addition, establishing a contract with his first employee, Carl had made actually quite a wise decision. Carl would have been privy to a lot of information about Victor's business model, his influencer contacts, and clients as well. So signing a non-disclosure, non-compete, and non-solicitation agreement meant that in the future, Carl would not be able to use this knowledge about the business to start a competitor company or share sensitive information. This, in turn, helped Victor to easily grow his business when he needed new employees, which he did end up needing in the future. And finally, establishing an automation system was critical for Victor's business to grow. Given his limited time, and obviously being a full-time student, with also extra sports on the side, his time was quite limited, and there was also an increasing number of clients. So this was necessary to keep the business going. Having that automated system was necessary. I've worked in supply chain and marketing for a number of years, and I know that having automation systems has been an important aspect of everyday life. In my supply chain background, I was using ERP, Enterprise Resource Planning Systems, SAP is what we used, on a daily basis. It was the kind of system that got everything running. It was what and made sure the correct product was made at the correct time in the correct way. And now in my marketing role, we use customer relationship management systems quite a lot, and I'm literally in there all day, every day. There's other tools like Hotjar, which is a sort of a simple chatbot tool that we have on our website that is also very useful. And so all these automations are super helpful to ensure, smooth running of requests, and it's something that Victor really needed for the business. So the fact that he sort of made that happen is a very important part of helping the business to sustain its growth. So what lessons can be learned from the case about starting an internet company? I think the first lesson that Victor learned was research, which is the first thing that anyone would need to do to start any business, is to research the market. Who is out there? What are they doing? What are they doing really well? And what are they doing not so well? And how can we, in a sense, capitalize on that or lean into that? So he researched what the competition was doing, and he surveyed the market and established what the issues were with the current market. Sort of realizing that the business models at the time didn't cater for small companies that had smaller budgets was something that he got from that research. And then also realizing that frustration that clients and influencers had in terms of how much was being paid for campaigns that were run, and then how much was being received by the influencers, and what were the results, and how could you measure these results. So his research helped him to sort of see the gaps and opportunities in these areas. Establishing the right, so this research helped him to establish the right business model, which is really important. Which this ensured this would ensure that you have a system for your business, for how your business will run and how it differentiates itself from the masses, which is really important. And so this unique offering that Victor was making, or that anyone would be making with their internet company, is what will keep the business going and growing. Secondly, establishing formal contracts is another essential lesson. Victor realized early on that he needed to protect his business and also create a formal relationship with his first employee, Carl. That first contract, with all the clauses of non-solicitation, non-compete, non-disclosure, were really essential to protect the business, and also it paved the way for easier recruitment of future employees. And it also ensured that the business model had a secure future. Contracts also help a business to have its transactions formally recognized. So in the example of TrendPies, where the growth nearly came to a halt when PayPal froze Victor's accounts because they couldn't see the invoices and the receipts. So having those contracts is so important to have that, formal establishment. So this helped Victor to learn the importance of contracts for the financial longevity of his firm. It's important also when starting an internet company, to realize that you need to be agile. Social networks such as MySpace or High5 are practically unheard of these days because they could not keep up with changing demand from internet users. Similarly, Victor's company could one day face competition from someone else who notices a gap that his firm is not serving. So Victor's current plan of doing daily campaigns with his clients is a good way to keep his finger on the pulse and ensure goals are met. From my studies, I've learned about the network economy and how the life cycle of a company is often shorter than a traditional business and in the industrial economy. And so new businesses are being established a lot more often, and so it's important to keep up to date with one's market and how to improve and adapt to rapid changes within that market, because who's to say that, you know, some other young person just like Victor is not going to come and, you know, have his millions of followers and realize, you know, another gap, you know, in the market that Victor's already serving in, and then, you know, come along and offer just, you know, something specific extra that ends up sort of, in a sense, maybe stealing those clients that Victor has. So that agility is really important to ensure that the business continues. And also being aware that competition is a lot stiffer because, you know, there's just a bigger pool of people with the internet and with social media. It's also crucial to have the right people employed for the job. When Victor needed an automated system, he informally employed the help of a distant friend. So he spoke to like a friend of a friend of a friend, and he didn't check whether this person had the right skills to design the system that he was looking for. And so $12,000 and a few weeks later, Victor had no working system. Later on, with proper research and recruitment, he found a suitable software engineer who was able to create the system that he needed. So having the right people in the right spot, in the right bus on the seat, sometimes it's said. In addition, clear communication, I think, is really important for an internet company, or any company for that matter. More often than not, persons in this type of business may not work in the same office space or in an office at all. For example, Victor and his first employees worked from their individual homes or dorm rooms. So when Victor sort of communicated with them, he needed to be clear exactly what he needed each one to contribute to the success of the company. Another example of where communication was quite important is when Victor needed the automated system. He realized that bridging the management and the information technology gap through clear communication was crucial. His first attempt had failed and he ended up losing $12,000. In his second attempt, Victor worked more closely with his software engineer before the engineer began to write the code for this automated system. From my experience in both IT and management, this is very important. Quite often, you know, the management team will want to achieve this, but then the IT team will sort of present these difficulties in achieving that goal. And sometimes it can be seen as if maybe the IT team is, maybe there's lack of commitment or doesn't want to sort of achieve those goals. But once the management team sort of decides to work a little bit more closely with the IT team, it becomes an easier process, and they're able to, achieve their goals and even surpass them. From my personal experience of working with systems like SAP, that has very much been the case, and even more recently with a data management system called Sitecore that we're currently installing for our department. It's been, a really interesting experience working with the IT team, and having that clear communication really helps to achieve the goal, and also to troubleshoot and be able to solve the issues as you go along. At the moment, we've gone live and there's quite a few teething issues, but keeping the communication going with the IT team is really important. And communication in general, especially in an internet platform where interactions can be maybe not so much face-to-face, there could be a video chat, but that face-to-face can be a little bit more removed than usual. So, what should Victor do with the business after graduation? which is a very interesting question. So we've looked at the different the positive things that Victor's business has brought to the industry. He's much more in touch with the client base, has a very good relationship with both clients and influencers because of that daily communication that he has going. And he's seeing, great returns. As we said before, he's had phenomenal success. Reaching $1 million in revenues within a very short space of time is quite impressive. And so I would say that Victor has something really good going for him here. Two things that I think are important to mention that I've learned through my studies is that this type of growth that Victor's had with his company is expected in a network economy where success is said to be non-linear. This means that with the internet, value grows exponentially as the number of members grows. In contrast, however, it's also advised that in the network economy, it's better to let success go at the top, which is a very interesting concept. So due to the fast life cycle of a business, it's usually better to sell the business once it's reached its peak before it starts to decline. This way, you can get a substantial amount of money for your business while it's doing well. And I think this is the tricky part to predict. The question is, how do you know when your business has reached its peak and is ready to be sold? I've read about companies like Yahoo that sold a little bit too late and so are not so popular these days. But then you have companies like Instagram and WhatsApp that have been bought by Facebook and now are, doing phenomenally well. And I wonder if the founders of these companies might slightly regret having sold them because maybe they're not making as much money. Maybe they didn't make as much money then as they could be making now if they hadn't sold it. So a little bit of, statistics from Victor's business and his situation is, so in 2018 he was making about $2,500 profit after expense each month, which is, I would say, fairly good for a startup company. But he knew that the business had greater potential, so he's already aware that the potential is there and can be greater. And so he deduced that he could run at least 100 campaigns per month, which is amazing if he's able to do that. And the business would make something closer to $30,000 per month in profits after expenses, which I think is pretty good. So given these numbers, I would recommend that Victor stay with his company, TrendPie, don't sell it yet. And now that he's not at university, he has, 8 hours a day, practically, if he wants to do the 8-hour work day. So he has ample number of hours per day that he can dedicate to building his client base, sort of continue to build that relationship with the influencers, do way more campaigns, and potentially also employ more people to sort of handle the scale of the business as it grows. So I would recommend that Victor stay with the business and grow it to its maximum potential. And then once Victor has exhausted his entrepreneurial genius on TrendPie, then he can sell his business and move on to establish other innovative businesses, as I'm sure he would have plenty of ideas for them. So that's my take on TrendPie, the case study. I welcome questions to this presentation about Victor's business, about his business model, his strategies, issues that he encountered along the way, and also about where to in the future for TrendPie. Thank you for listening, and yeah. Thank you.